So, Western Conference predictions. I'll admit there were some choices. You know a conference is tough if you're still not that confident in your selections, not because the teams aren't capable of fulfilling being a certain seed, but also it could just backfire anytime because another team could overtake them and it's a whole thing. One thing's for certain, the bottom is at least easier to guess, so we could start with that. Last place, I have the Utah Jazz. While I don't think they will be the worst team in the entire NBA, I think that award belongs to Brooklyn, and I do think they're capable of at least winning over 20 games. It's still clear that there's a lot left to work on for them, and front management has made it pretty obvious they're still in this rebuilding process. So I know Jazz fans, it's gonna take a really long time, but hey, Ace Bailey looks promising, and even though you might suffer watching Yusuf Nurkic play an entire season for you, at least it will free up some salary cap space. But yeah, as for now, Utah's number 15th, and at 14th, I have the Sacramento Kings. And before the Sabonis and Murray injuries were announced, looking at the overall roster, I still would have had the Kings here. I mean, individually, there are a lot of talented players, but as a collective, it's pretty bad. Especially with Keegan's injury. He is one of their best defensive players in terms of versatility, size, and there's just a reason why Kings fans consider him as this defensive safety. And now that he'll be out for a couple months, I mean, unless Keon Ellis goes Super Saiyan or something, this defense will be absolutely atrocious. Also, there's a lot of contrasting playstyles here because when I look at guys like Malik Monk, Devin Carter, and recently signed Russell Westbrook, I'm expecting Sacramento to play at a quicker pace so that it could fit all of these guys' playstyles. But then they also have one of their main guys in DeMar DeRozan, who's kind of the opposite of that. So the Kings are just another team I'm not expecting a lot of greatness from. And speaking of, that transitions to our 13th place, the Memphis Grizzlies. Maybe to some this could be controversial, but to me, this team is just cursed. Already we have this plethora of injuries, especially in the front court and guard rotations. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Edey will be out for a significant amount of time. Scottie Pippen Jr. will also have toe surgery. John Morant, it seems like he'll be day-to-day with a sprained ankle, but still day-to-day nonetheless. And then you add the fact that Ty Jerome will also be out. I mean, this is a team that has shown that they're not really healthy at all a lot of the times. 23 to 24, Memphis definitely doesn't want to talk about that one. And then this past season, even before that OKC series where Jalen Wells and John Morant weren't available for much of that, they still had guys like Vince Williams Jr., Brandon Clark, Gigi Jackson. There was a lot of inconsistency with the rotations. Guys were always in and out, and the fact that you're already suffering that same issue before we even play a single game, it's just not a great sign. I hope I'm proven wrong about this as the season progresses because they do have a lot of great talent. I'm pretty intrigued by the development of Jalen Wells, Cam Spencer, and Cedric Coward, but when I consider how they somehow anger the basketball gods and their luck, along with some of their questionable defense, my optimism is just at a really low place as a result. Speaking of my optimism being really low, at 12th, New Orleans Pelicans. I've seen the skinny pictures of Zion, I've seen the clips of him seeming to take things more seriously. However, you know how I mentioned in my Eastern predictions, where if things keep happening, it will just be more of the norm than an outlier? That's the case with Zion Williamson. Now to clarify, I would absolutely love if Zion played 70 games-ish. I mean, just the fact that for last season, he was on a heavy minutes restriction for the minimum amount of games he played, and he still provided a lot of special memories. Heck yeah, I want 3 times of that. And although they have nice pieces in Herbert Jones and Trey Murphy, Yves Messi looks good, Sadiq Bey looks like he's regaining his footing. But I've heard this before, I've seen this before. A Pelicans team that has great young talent surrounding Zion Williamson. But because Zion gets unlucky again, New Orleans withers down to, at best, an 8th or 9th seed. When you mention the fact that DeJounte Murray will also come back from injury, how he will mesh with Jordan Poole, it's not like they can't work together, but there will definitely be a lot of questions. But it's clear that this system is in place around Zion. There's a reason they traded Brandon Ingram away. So yeah, it's understandable as to why the Pelicans fan base has some high hopes for this squad. I just happen to be on that other end. And at 11th place, just outside the play-in, I have the Phoenix Suns. I think this will be a much better team than people give them credit for. However, I still don't think it will be enough. We could start at the positives first. I feel like they have much better depth than this prior season. And also their collective intensity seems to have increased a lot, which might not seem like a big deal, but if you've seen this past Suns team, just any one player showing signs of life, the Suns fans are immediately grateful for. Like, that's how bad things were. And I feel like this newfound effort of intensity is all because of the arrival of Dillon Brooks, and I feel like the potential of him and Ryan Dunn combined in the forward spots on defense, that will absolutely make things tough for the opponents. And I feel like the Suns have redeemed themselves when it comes to the center position, which I will give them props because I thought that was kind of hard to even fix. But when you have an underrated player in Oso Ighodaro, you draft Malawak at 10, and Mark Williams, he is a big question mark in health, but he's still really efficient near the rim. And from what I've seen, despite the small sample size, the schemes from Coach Jordan Ott seem to be an upgrade than what Budenholzer was previously implementing. However, even though all of those positives were much needed, I still don't think it's enough to overtake any of the other Western Conference teams. Also, I feel like Devin Booker might have a lot more offensive burden now, because with the previous version, a lot of teams will pay attention to KD and sometimes Bradley Beal. But with those guys gone, I'm sure Devin Booker will again be the main assignment that defenses focus on. Now, Jalen Green could help with that, but I just feel like he was so inconsistent last season. And considering the contract he's being paid at the moment, I feel like you can't really have any more of that inconsistency. But again, he's still quite young, and there have been games where he does ball out, so who knows, maybe Jalen Green could take pressure off of D-Book's shoulders. Alright, now this is where things get intense, but it is a predictions video nonetheless. I have to stick with my gut. So at number 10, the Dallas Mavericks. And despite what Nico Harrison said about the Luka Doncic trade and how they're in a state of winning now, which is still so crazy to me, I still think the time for that will be for next season. Not saying they won't be nice, but they already have some factors working against them. The injury to Kyrie Irving, he might return around February or March, which insinuates that Cooper Flagg will have to take that challenge of being the number one guy. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely think he's capable of that, but it will absolutely start out rough. Like, I don't think he'll come out guns blazing. I feel like he'll happen to fall in the trope of what 90% of rookies fall into, where it takes a while for them to get adjusted to this NBA intensity, and then through the halfway point, they start balling out. Now I know that there's the possibility where Cooper's just nice like that from day one, then yeah, Dallas will absolutely have no trouble being near the top. But it's just so hard for me to see that one case. I mean, even Wemby, a guy like him, he's kind of struggled out of the gate. He wasn't terrible, and we have seen a lot of special moments, but it wasn't at the production level as it was to this past season. So I feel like with Flagg falling into that doesn't leave a lot of offensive options besides from Anthony Davis. And they still have guys like D'Lo, Clay, Brandon Williams, but still all of those guys have their limitations, especially AD. He's also tasked with anchoring this Mavericks defense. So I feel like all of that pressure can wear him down, especially since he's not in the younger side of ages. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, although the offense won't be at the bottom, it's kind of hard for me to see it above league average. But hey, the defense will be super elite, so maybe being ranked 14th in offensive rating will be just enough. But again, not much working in their favor. As I referred to earlier, health in all capitals. AD, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford are all so important if this Mavericks season has to be a success. They're kind of the poster boys when it comes to being injury prone. So while I believe it won't be as bad as last season, it could still get pretty bad. So that's who I have at 10th place, but even then, I wouldn't be that surprised if they land in the upper areas. We move on to 9th place, Portland Trail Blazers. My goodness, this defense, if it's not top 5, I will be absolutely surprised. I mean, you already have guys like Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara, who, by the way, congrats on that extension. The potential of Donovan Clingan, Matisse Thybulle, who returned from injury, and you trade for Drew Holiday. That's a defense that no one wants to see. I guess the only problem comes with offense. We'll see if Shaedon Sharpe can take that leap. We'll see if Young Hansen can contribute in any way. Possibly Scoot could take that next step. I'm not sure as the starting point guard. So yeah, offense could struggle, especially if Jeremy Grant isolation possessions are still in the game book. I feel like it will work better if Jeremy comes off the bench. I know he has that really absurd contract, but let's be real here, who is he going to replace if he is planning on starting? Toumani? Denny? Shaedon? You best be out of your mind if that's what's going to happen. At 8th place, I want to clarify, I am absolutely aware that this prediction will make me a hypocrite. But that's the case with this Wild Wild West. I have the Lakers here. And the reason why I feel like I'm a major hypocrite is because not even like a couple weeks ago, in just one of my previous vids, I had Luka Doncic going to MVP. And you can't win MVP if you're an 8th seed. But if it does help a little, I do want to point out that the thought of the Lakers being the 8th seed wasn't really on my mind at that time. I mean, it's not a myth that Luka has elevated kind of mediocre squads to greater levels. For reference, that 2021-2022 Mavs team that made the conference finals, you could argue that their second best player was a Jalen Brunson who wasn't even in his prime yet. Actually, Brunson was nice against Utah, but still, point still stands. He was in New York nice. And we all know how insane of an offensive prowess Luka is. Even though this starting roster has a lot of concerns, Luka will just do Luka things. LeBron is out with an injury to start the season. This will give him more of an opportunity to just cook. And then when preparing for this predictions video, I just kept looking at this Lakers roster. As I constantly looked down the list, I just kind of lost more and more hope. Now, don't get me wrong, Luka MVP is still on the table. Let's actually start as to why I believe Lakers could be mediocre. The defense. I will read 4 players in their starting lineup, and 99% chance it is their starting lineup. I know JJ Redick has officially announced it, so it could look somewhat different than what I'm referencing here, but at least these 4 guys are bound to have so much playing time. You have Luka at the 1, Austin Reeves at the 2, Rui Hachimura at the 4, and DeAndre Ayton at the 5. That is so gross. DA went on the record to state that he could be a quality anchor for this Lakers defense. I'm like, good luck with that. And again, I didn't look at who JJ announced could be the starting lineup. So maybe it could be different. Maybe Marcus Smart or Jared Vanderbilt could be inserted to at least provide some help and alleviate the tons of miscues that will eventually occur. But again, those two are also so limited on offense. Like, opposing defenses will single those guys out. So no matter how much your defense will improve, the offense will suffer. And then when you take those guys out, sure, you'll have a much better offense, but just that defense, it is that bad. Now, LeBron James, he will return at least around December mark, and LeBron and Luka will always be a deadly duo. I could see Jake LaRavia being a positive depth piece as well, but still, despite all of those, it's just so hard for me to feel like they'll be above the ranks of OKC or the Nuggets or Spurs. Now, getting back to the reason why I still have Luka MVP on the table, something has to happen post-trade deadline in order for the Lakers to really be a threat. And I get it, they could be a threat right out the gate, but let's just go with my hypothetical here, where they could be like 20-20 or something like that, like just barely hanging around play-in territory. Rob Pelinka could make some moves. Now obviously it's not going to be to the extent of this past trade deadline. Nothing will ever top that, but he has shown in previous trade deadlines he can be capable of making the right acquisitions, which will eventually lead them to a much better place. I still remember the 2023 deadline, getting off the bad fit with Russell Westbrook, and in exchange you get D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley, which might not seem notable now, but at that time, that was enough to turn things around and help lead LA to their most memorable playoff run in quite some time. So it might seem silly, but that's kind of what I'm banking on as of this moment. And I'm not trying to insinuate that Pelinka is such a great GM. No, and he's kind of far from that. But you can't really fault him when it comes to making trades. He has done quite well in that aspect. So yes, I'm aware that the Luka MVP and AFC don't really mesh well. It is what it is. I can't change the rest of the teams. I just don't see them falling down further than them. Another controversial, oh my god, this is really like, oh my god, it's about as controversial as you can get. I have the Timberwolves at 7th. 2 major reasons. One of them is the inconsistent offense. Now, if you look at the statistics, you might be like, what are you talking about? They rank 8th in offensive rating. But I feel like they fall back into that offensive archetype where they will show flashes of nice play, and then down the line, there seems to be a lack of innovation or adjustments, and it will just leave a lot of Wolves fans frustrated. Admittedly, I haven't watched every Timberwolves game, but there were quite the cases where I've seen Timberwolves fans express their frustrations because Coach Finch and company can't really seem to take that next step in offensive efficiency. Also, the offense seems to be super heavily reliant on Anthony Edwards, and even though he is that guy, he also doesn't really take the best shots, or at least the most efficient looks. Also, the spacing of Randall and Gobert can still be a problem. I know they turned things around in the second half of this past season, but as we've seen in their series against OKC, that duo seemed to have hit their ceiling already. Like, I don't think there's any more room for expansion. And speaking of Gobert, that's my other reason. To me, this defense can go as far as Rudy Gobert can go. Considering he's 33 years old and just super bad at offense, like it's kind of insane how one-dimensional he is. We could be talking about a possible regression. Now, I'm not claiming he'll be terrible. He's still worthy of being that anchor, but I don't know for how long. I don't know how much further they can rely on Gobert to really help their defense. I mean, when you look at how much better production Naz Reid can provide, Gobert does end up looking kind of expendable. And then you look at his contract, and then immediately you think the opposite. So again, he might not fall back, but even if he doesn't regress, we see a lot of Minnesota's great opponents be really successful at limiting Gobert and running him off the floor. And I don't want to really keep bringing up OKC, but when looking back at that series, I don't remember a single positive thing Rudy had done. So that's just another concern. While I don't think this upcoming season is the time to push that panic button, like they still have to keep that in their minds. Next up, buying a lot of stock in this young team, San Antonio Spurs at 6th place. A lot of this banking on San Antonio is heavily reliant on whether Coach Mitch Johnson is ready for the task of being that next guy. Also, the team as a whole is pretty young, so there's going to be the issues that come with not being too experienced. And plus, the injury issues is not as major as the other clubs, but I'm just praying they stay healthy. Prior to this upcoming season, Wemby's time was cut short, and De'Aaron Fox is already hit with some nagging injuries here and there. And Jeremy Sohan is going to miss the season opener. Still, even though all of that has occurred, I cannot deny that the trajectory of San Antonio could not be in a much better place. I mean, last season they were on par to at least make the play-in before we all know what happened with Wemby. A lot of pieces just fit this Spurs puzzle nicely. The duo of Fox and Wemby will go oh so hard. Keldon Johnson and Julian Champagnie off the bench is pretty elite. And even then, you can still sub those guys in the starting lineup and expect positive results. They definitely resolved one of their biggest issues in terms of backup reserves. Luke Cornett, I will definitely miss him. He's done so much, but man, will he do even more in the San Antonio system. Also, receiving Kelly Olynyk in a trade is not bad. You just gotta hope that he plays like Utah Kelly and not Toronto Kelly. And there is the problem of how will Ron Harper fit, because you already paid Vassell that massive contract. And Stephon Castle had just won Rookie of the Year. I'm not sure if him coming off the bench will be the brightest idea. So that does lead me to conclude that Harper Jr. might sit back and learn, deliver his impact in spurts, which honestly, that's not a bad idea. Me mentioning them having so many talents in this position, that's a positive problem. And the biggest cherry on top, Wembanyama. I mean, it's been said a whole bunch. It's like kicking a dead horse at this point. Gosh, I can't wait. Especially since I drafted him in fantasy. I really can't wait for that. So if you can't tell, I'm high on the Spurs, but I'm even higher on this 5th place team. Nice segue. Los Angeles Clippers. Honestly, I even surprised myself with this decision, because the ultimate conclusion we all came to when viewing this Clippers squad is that they're old. Retirement home Clippers. James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, you get Chris Paul, Brook Lopez, Nicholas Batum, even though he aged oh so gracefully. Like, this all makes us immediately jump to the conclusion of we might see them in the IR report a lot. And initially I was on this boat, but looking how this past season went, I don't think it'll be as bad. Now, Kawhi Leonard, I've already given up on the fact that he can remain healthy for at least 60 games. But looking at these other veterans, they've played a lot more games than I gave them credit for initially. James Harden only missed 6. CP3 started all 82 games. Brook Lopez played around 80. So all the credit to those guys. They have shown that they are on an upward trend in terms of health. And I know they will lose the presence of Norman Powell, but you fill up a major hole in the power forward position with the acquisition of John Collins, and you still have Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn to support you on defense. And speaking of defense, this is why I don't have the Clippers that much higher, and the defense is not terrible. We're not saying they're Lakers type of defense, but there was one name that I didn't mention, and that was Bradley Beal. We'll get to what he can contribute on offense in a second, but just the idea of Harden and Beal being your backcourt, oh my goodness. I know Zubac had already received his extension, but he might need to have another one already just for the amount of carrying he'll have to do. Now, despite Bradley Beal's massive gap in defense, offensively there could be some positives, and I say could be because this past season he was so inconsistent, but maybe it could be to a lack of effort. And given that the contract you gave him was 2 years, 11 million, I believe, and along with the very important point that he won't be as burdened on offense as much, given the fact that Kawhi, Zubac, and Harden are the main focal points for the Clippers, we could see some nights where Beal can turn some heads around for the better. But as always, I'm still very cautious on their health status. While I do think it can get better, there's always a chance it could be a lot worse. At my 4th spot, Golden State Warriors. This could be seen as blasphemy. A Warriors team that has made no loud additions, still being capable of competing with the most elite Western tandems? And I feel like yes. And the major reason why I believe in them so much was their performance from the second half of this past season. Those stretch of games were about as dominant as one could have asked for from Golden State. When I noticed how Stephen Curry got so much pressure lifted off of him from the arrival of Jimmy Butler, and how that could still be into effect for this upcoming season, yeah, things could get dangerous. I can never doubt Stephen Curry, which you might have argued could have been from past experiences. Just thinking about how Draymond and Jimmy are still elite on the defensive end, with Moses Moody also becoming one of their they're better defenders. Like, I have no problem in believing in that. And also, despite the fact I mentioned they didn't make any loud additions, to me, those additions are still exceptional and actually instilled more confidence in me believing they could be a top 5 seed. The one that popped out to me the most was Al Horford, and when you want to talk about a seamless fit, this is it. Big Al is still underrated as ever, not only in shooting, but he still's got it on the defensive end. So given the fact that Horford finally gives them some size, and he really can't be seen as a liability, we're gonna ignore the Jalen Brunson ISOs, I just love that fit. I mean, just Big Al by himself unlocking the option for Draymond to actually play the 4 majority of the season, that's pretty troublesome for the rest of the league. But hey, what if Big Al's tired? You know, the season could be a grind. Despite him also drinking from the fountain of youth, there will be times where he needs some rest. Enter Quinton Post. Golly, if we want to talk about the most underrated rookies from this past season, he legit qualifies for that conversation. He was a fantastic shooter and someone you could always rely on to provide energy. When the problems surrounding the play of Tracy Jackson-Davis had occurred, Quinton Post just stepped up and solved most of those issues. I haven't even gotten to their other signings in Gary Payton II and DeAnthony Melton. Oh, one more thing. Buddy Hield can't afford to be as inconsistent as he was this past season. I know there's that whole notion of him just having this cycle of inconsistency. Maybe him coming off the bench, that'll be a much better idea. So maybe most of the NBA community might not have the Warriors this high, but I guess I'm kind of the exception. Alright, moving on to the top 3. This is where things get easier. Third place, I have the Houston Rockets. The injury of Fred VanVleet is a major reason for this, and I know there's some silver linings. Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd will get more opportunity to prove themselves. We could see more of Şengün being an offensive hub, but in terms of being a steady two-way presence, Fred VanVleet is about as good as you can get. But still, 3 seed is pretty good, and it's no surprise how loaded this roster is. Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, oh how can I forget Dorian Finney-Smith, silly me, plus Kevin Durant. But the thing I'm most excited for is that double big lineup. I mean, we could be seeing a ton of that. I could see Steven Adams starting games with Şengün at the 4, and then Capello coming off the bench. Like, that is unreal. Again, that's just more of a point of how great this Houston team is. It's just I would have had the Rockets a lot higher if VanVleet didn't go down. Who I did have higher though at second place is the Denver Nuggets. I mean, this past offseason alone was just greater than whatever Calvin Booth did in his entire tenure. Trading Dario Saric for Jonas Valanciunas, I didn't even think that was feasible. I thought they had to include a couple of second-round picks at least. Bruce Brown and Tim Hardaway Jr. on minimum deals? That's about as much of a steal as you can get. And you still have guys like Julian Strawther and Jalen Pickett. They could have a nice future. At least I have seen some nice flashes from them. But that starting 5. Oh, that starting 5. We talk about the team with KCP, how that was argued for the best starting 5 in the NBA at the time. But man, replacing Michael Porter Jr. with Cam Johnson and seeing how Christian Braun had stepped up should have been at least the most improved candidate. It is, I can't even put to words how amazing this starting 5 could be. Gosh, Cam Johnson along with Nikola Jokic, this is what dreams are made of. Now again, despite all my hype with Denver, I still have OKC as the top of the West. Now 68 wins is really hard to repeat, but considering they got 68 wins with Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, even Alex Caruso sometimes, just all of them being out with injuries, just the fact that they're actually healthy, 60 plus wins is pretty inevitable, and their half-court offense, it could be way better. It ain't bad, but I know that there is so much more room to grow. Man, just now I'm getting hyped up as much as I was with Denver. Like seriously, I would not be surprised if a repeat of Denver versus OKC will be at the Western Conference Finals. But as I said before, I believe OKC can repeat as the Kings of the West, and I also could believe that some of these teams could flip in the standings. This is as volatile of a Western Conference as you can get. So yeah, my Western Conference predictions. Hope you guys enjoyed it. What do you guys think? What are your predictions for this very crazy Western Conference? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.